Hi folks, welcome back again. Now we're going to start work on sorting this tote and this knob out. Now obviously we left it last time. I'd mixed the rosewood dust and PVA glue together and we were at that sort of stage. That's all nice and dry now, as you can hear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start getting this sanded flat. Obviously it's going to leave scratches and what have you in this because I'm going to go at it with some slightly rougher sandpaper. So then what we'll do is we'll get this sponge sanding block, sponge in the middle with the coarser material on the outside, and we'll almost buff that up. So I'm going to start work, as I say, with the rougher sandpaper. We're going to get this fetched right down. Hopefully that's all gone into all that crack and filled it completely up, which it should have done. So we'll start sanding. I'm not going to make you sit and watch the whole thing, so I'll start standing, just show you how I go about it, and then I'll come back once I'm done and we'll go on to the next step. So it really is just a matter of just starting to knock all that top off, as you can see. And as I say, at this stage, you know, you will be scratching because you're going to have to go against the grain to get this down. But don't worry about that, we can get the scratches out. We can work our way right up to very fine sandpaper, as I say, with the sanding block as well, and then even wire wool to give it a really good polish. But there we go, it's starting to come down now. You know, we'll as I say, work on that a bit more. We'll get that right down, and then I'll be back. Okay folks, so we're back again. So probably about a good half an hour's work, I would say, on that. And there we go, there are the results. Obviously we've got a small line there, but that's sitting on the surface as just a bit of the rosewood paste. Obviously the PVA's just dried see-through just to give us a small line. But once we get some colour on that small line there, and if you're picking it up, will disappear. Obviously the joints around there, across there, and on the back. But that's just with a bit of rough sandpaper. Okay, but as we can see, it's all scratched up and really dull now. So what we need to do is bring this back to life a bit. So again, one of these flexible sanding pads are really good because you can obviously bend them as well to get right in there, and it's almost like a buffing pad, I suppose. Now what we're going to start doing is working with the grain. Again, I might be teaching you to suck eggs here, but when we're going against the grain, obviously we're roughing it up and leaving scratches in it, and the fact that we have used a coarser grade sandpaper, but with a little bit of work, there we go. I'm not quite there. I think there's the break, that line there, if you can see that. But by working on this, and again we can bend it so we can get right in there and under the horn. So what I shall do now is spend a good bit of time working on that, working all the way around. Just keep knocking the dust off because they do clog up quite easily with sanding pads. But I shall just keep working like that. I shall work on the knob as well because that's in a bit of a sorry state. So again, going with the grain so the grain runs up. Now that lovely sapwood that we had suddenly looks quite dull, but it is a nice contrast to the dark. So once we get some colour and some finish on that, I'm sure that'll start looking lovely. So I'm going to work on these a bit more with the sanding pad, and then I'll come back to you. So here we are back again folks. Now this has been completely cleaned up, completely polished up. As we can see, we've got a little bit of transparency showing through there with the PVA glue where it's dried clear, but other than that, you know, that joint has pretty much disappeared. Now once we get some colour on there, it will colour that slight bit of white or clear, if you can see that. But that has been completely cleared up, and then I've given it a good wipe over and dusted it off, so that is now dust free. Same for the knob, and suddenly that bit of sapwood seems to be shining through a bit more, so that's going to colour lovely. So I'm just going to clean the area and then I should be right back and we'll get some colour on these. Okay, right then, it's time to get a bit of colour onto the tote and the knob. This is the stuff I use. It's a wood dye. I think it is water based, but it does go on well. It's Indian rosewood colour for obvious reasons. Now you'll find that this will take a good few applications, so all I do is a small amount onto a rag, and then it's just a matter of rubbing it over. Now what I would rather do, as they do suggest with the stuff like this, I would rather do lots of very light coats, because if you put it on too thick, you know, you can alter the colour. So I would rather just go in with a light coat like that, drop it on my little homemade drying rack. And then the interesting one, I think, is always the handle or the tote. How's this going to take the colour, especially where that crack was? So again, a bit more on there and then just spread it about. But like I said, I don't like to go on with really thick coats. I would rather put lots of thin coats on. And I hope you can see how that's really fetching the grain up. Just finish the top off there. Try and avoid fingerprints if you can. And I try and brush with the grain. And I think you'll see as well where the break was, it's actually coloured it. So I don't know if you're picking that up. The break was somewhere across there, but that's the sort of stage we're at. That's just one coat, and that's only a coat of colour. We've got to go on top of that once it's had several coats. We've got to go on top of that with some lacquer, some top finish. So we'll let that dry. I'm going to apply several coats and then we'll come back and put the finish coat on. Okay folks, so we're at the stage now. This has had 4 coats of the rosewood wood dye that I showed you earlier. 4 coats, allowing a good drying time in between. It's quite sunny today, so I've actually put them outside on this little board, and they've actually dried really quickly in between coats, so it's not been too bad. Obviously looking very dull, but that join has virtually disappeared. I'm really pleased with that. There's the knob with that bit of sapwood again. So as I say, at this stage with that colour on, they're just looking dull. Hi folks, back again. Now we're at the stage where what I've managed to do is get it all finished off. I've obviously waited for that rosewood dye that I've used to dry. It had 4 coats of that, and it's quite sunny and warm outside, so I've popped them outside on this little board with a couple of screws up for them to sit on. Dried quite nicely. And then what I've done, and again this probably goes against what a lot of the purists and the traditionalists, shall we say, it goes against what they would do. They would probably just apply a paste wax or something like that, which I'm going to do. I'm going to use a microcrystalline restoration wax that I do. This is Axminster's own, but there are other ones available. I'm going to do that in a minute. But what I've done is, once I've finished putting the dye in and it was all dry, I've just used this lacquer, just this cheap spray-on lacquer. It's a couple of £2. It's obviously the shaky, the rattle can stuff. allowing about 10 or 15 minutes in between coats. Just slightly misted it. I haven't filmed it because I've not done it in here, I've done it outside. Obviously you've got to be in a well ventilated area. Letting it dry in between coats, as I say, and it's had 3 coats of the clear lacquer, so it's all dry, and that's the sort of stage we're at now. You know, it's got a really nice sheen to it, and obviously it's going to be hard wearing. Let's just have a look. I'm not sure if you can see. You can just see the line there, and you can just see it there where it's not quite coloured, but overall, considering the state that that was in, that's what we've ended up with. We'll pop that to one side, and then again the knob, and I'm really pleased with this, the way that sapwood, and I know I've mentioned it all the way through, but that's a lovely feature, and it really does get picked up now with this dark black surround, almost like an eye, like an iris. So there we go, that's finished, got a good sheen to it. But again, what would happen is, using it, you would just slowly start knocking that lacquer top off. So what we'll do is, we'll go ahead, pop the top off my wax. You can see it's well used, it's started getting a bit gloopy in there. And then what I'll do is, it's just a good amount, pop my finger on there, and what you'll do is, when you first put this on, it will dull that shine down. And again, the first time I did it, you do think that you've taken that shine off, but obviously the lacquer's still there. It's just this this wax just goes on dull. Pop that on there to dry. Don't want too much of this, you know, you don't want to absolutely layer it on, cake it on. What I do is, again, as I've said all the way through, it's I'd rather do 3 or 4 really light coats. So again, that goes on. Make sure we've covered it everywhere. And again, you'll notice it's gone quite dull, but we don't worry about that because we know it's going to polish up. Not forgetting the top. Try and avoid fingerprints again with anything you do, because it will dry and show the imprint there. So again, pop that on there to dry. I'm going to pop this outside in the sun just to speed that process up. But that's the sort of stage we're at with them. Again, they have gone quite dull with the wax. I'm going to put probably 3 or 4 coats of that on, allowing sort of 5 or 6 minutes in between coats to dry. So I'll get that done, get them polished up, and then we'll see the end result.